Thank you, Lonnie. Just briefly about Disability Rights California, also known as DRC. We've been around since the mid-70s. We are the protection and advocacy system for people with disabilities in the state of California. Every state has a protection and advocacy system. It was established by Congress a long time ago. We provide legal services to people with disabilities for free. I encourage that you go to our website to learn more about us, the work that we do, work that we don't do. And we have lots of resources, especially publications on many topics. Speaking about topics, today's topic is about transition services. And I'm going to explain what that means in a moment. But this disclaimer is basically saying, look, the information is as good as today. It can change tomorrow. So, before you completely rely on the information in the future, you should reach out and make sure that it's still valid. You can reach out to us, for example, or you can reach out to our sister organization called the Office of Client Rights Advocates. They advocate for clients of the regional center, not only with regional center issues, but with other issues that we deal with, like special education, health benefits, etc. And we're going to put the OCRA contact information in chat in case you don't know who your client's rights advocate is. So what are transition services? What are we talking about? So these are services that are provided to special education students from perhaps the age of 16 until they leave the school system. And these are services that are going to help these students when they're out of the school system. For example, services that will be geared towards perhaps employment with the Department of Rehab, or paid internship programs with their regional center if they are regional center clients. So and it really gets everyone thinking about, and especially the student, because it's about the student. What is it that this person wants to do when they get out of school? Do they want to go to an institution of higher learning? Do they have a vocational goal? How do they want to spend their time? Where do they want to live? So all of these things are things that are discussed in what are called transition meetings. And Mary, who's going to cover the special ed aspect, will talk more about what special ed offers. So transition planning can involve up to 3 entities. It can involve regional center if you are a regional center consumer. It'll involve the school district if you're a special ed student, and if you have a vocational goal, or you think you want to work as a student when you leave the school district, you can invite the Department of Rehabilitation to these transition planning meetings. And Raymond, who's with us today, a co-worker, he's going to be talking about pre-ETS services through the Department of Rehabilitation. So when we're talking about these different systems, remember the school district, it's the IEP. That's the contract between the school district and the student. The regional centers are IPPs, the contract between the regional center and the student, and the Department of Rehab is the IPE, Individual Plan for Employment. But the transition meeting will create a transition plan, and those are called transition plans, part of the IEP. And of course, if the regional center or DOR are going to offer services to the student, well, of course, it's going to be in the IPP and or the IPE too. Later on, towards the end of the presentation, we'll briefly discuss how do you deal with disagreements or hurdles. Mainly, you've got the 3 entities, if they're involved, pointing the finger and saying, no, that's not what we do. You have to go to the school, or you have to go here, it becomes like that sometimes. So this is just a little checklist of what you should include in the plan. Of course, it's going to be specific to the student. What is it that the student wants to do, right? Just like any plan, you've got to have concrete goals. make sure that they're achievable. You've got timelines, and it reflects the choices of the student, reflects high expectations. What are the services and supports that are going to be provided? And of course, ongoing review of this to make sure that the services and supports are in fact helping the student. Always say yes to high expectations. You can do it with the right supports. I do an SSI training, and when I talk about how Social Security, how they evaluate someone to determine whether they're disabled or not, I just say, look, just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you can't work. In fact, there are many people who work who have disabilities. So, for those of us who think that way, we should be thinking outside the box and thinking, hey, yeah, just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't work. And basically believe in yourself, believe that you can do it, just like any typical person would. So this is more information about what to put in the transition plan. Of course, you're going to identify the agencies that are going to provide the services and supports. What are they going to provide the services and supports? When are they going to provide? For how long are they going to provide the services and supports? When will they be reviewing the plan to see if everything is going according to plan? And if an entity denies a service or support, remember that they are required to provide a notice that includes your rights to appeal. I'm now going to hand it over to Mary. Mary's internet is not working that well, so she's joining us by phone. So that's why you're not going to see her, but I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Mary.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Rios, and I'm also with Disability Rights California. So we're going to cover the school district portion of the individual transition plan. And as Maria mentioned, an ITP is an individualized transition plan. It should be part of the IEP when the student begins high school, but no later than 16 years of age. And it's really important to have that conversation with your child to see what their interests are. Do they, like Maria said, do they want to pursue higher education? Do they want to work? They should think about all these things when going into high school, to start thinking about that plan. What is going to be needed to develop the goals and objectives, and what supports and services need to be included? They have to be measurable goals. They should include the services to support those goals. And one example could be, say, for example, the student wants to pursue higher education. What is the student going to need to pursue higher education? They're going to depends on what subjects they're going to take, what they want to major in, and include, the what it's going to take to reach that goal. There's also an assessment that can be completed by the school district to see where the student is academically, and to see what supports and service, again, the student is going to need. So it's really important if when the school does the evaluation, the transition plan evaluation, you want to make sure that you review that evaluation. If you disagree with that evaluation, you can certainly request what's called an independent evaluation. The school district has two options. They either approve the independent evaluation, or they would have to file for due process and show that the evaluation that was completed by the school district was an appropriate evaluation. Next. Thank you, Maria. So what should be included in the transition plan? So again, if there are employment goals, if the student wants to complete or wants to do a specific job, competitive and integrated employment, included supported employment, customized employment. So there's an array of things that the student can select depending on whether the student is able to complete that. But you can also request a functional evaluation if the student needs help developing their employment goal. A functional evaluation can give the student guidance. The evaluation assesses the student in a situation that is a 2 year type of work in which they are interested in. So it gives them practical information about their strengths, their skills. There's also a website called California Career Zone. And I've actually looked at this website. It's a really good website. They can complete an assessment and basically include their interests, what they want to do, if they want to pursue higher education, if they would like to do some specific employment. This evaluation will basically tell the student what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, if they want to pursue higher education, what schools are available, what the cost would be. It's a really good website. I would encourage people to visit that website. um, Again, and if you want to pursue a higher education, if you want to go to the community college, the university, it's really important that when developing that transition plan, that it's included in that transition plan. And they should also include any supports and services that are going to be needed to reach that goal. In addition to that, I highly encourage that they include how they're going to measure whether their goals are being met or not. And if they're not being met, address that at the IEP or call an IEP meeting and ask why the goal isn't being met. Maybe the goal has to be changed. Maybe they need some additional supports and services. So it's really important to follow where the student is in terms of meeting those goals. Again, employment. Oh, sorry, Maria. There's also independent living skills. So the student wants to, and the parents, they want to talk to the student about what they want to do. As Maria mentioned, what do they want to do out in the community? Do they want to participate in different activities? Do they want to go to college? What is it that they want to do? And include these goals in the individual transition plan. There's also independent living skills. Maria, am I covering your section? I'm sorry.
Well, this is the
Okay,
school.
got it.
Some
Got it.
some some students are not regional center consumers, right?
Yes, that's correct. So, some of the things that you want to include, for example, if the student wants to learn independent living skills, there are agencies out there that can also assist, such as the independent living centers. These are non-residential agencies that can provide independent living skills to the student in terms of showing them, for example, how to budget their money, how to grocery shop, independent living skills, how to cook, how to do their laundry, maintaining a home, paying bills. So there are agencies out there, and if you're a regional center client, or if the consumer is a regional center client, they certainly want to get the regional center involved as well. Again, there may be some consumers that are not regional center clients, but those consumers can also go to the independent living center agencies to try to obtain those services as well. Instructional services, we talked about this. What goals and objectives are needed for the instructional services, any community experiences? What is it that the student wants to do out in the community? Any employment related objectives? You want to make sure that all the supports and services are included so that the student can reach their goal. Related services, maybe the student needs some additional speech, maybe they need occupational therapy, career guidance, maybe they can speak to their counselor, they may need transportation. So these are some of the areas and services that can be included in the transition plan. It's a matter of identifying what the student needs to ensure that it is written in the transition plan, and the transition plan is part of the IEP. And remember that the IEP is basically a contract between the school and the student. So you want to make sure that if any services are needed, that they're included in the IEP. They can tell you something verbally, but if it doesn't exist in the written document, if it's not written in the document, it basically doesn't exist. We do have some publications. There we have publications on transition, and we also have in our special education rights and responsibilities manual. We have chapter 10 that talks about the transition plan as well. Here we have an example of the individual transition plan. It looks similar, it's part of the IEP. So again, you can have more than one goal. You can talk about the community experience that you want to include, any vocational goal. You can also, I mean, if the student is thinking long term, and let's say they want to start a business, the Department of Rehabilitation can assist them with that as well. They would have to develop a business plan, and Raymond's going to talk more about that in terms of Department of Rehab. But everything that the student wants to do once they become an adult should be included in the transition plan so they can get that started, and the sooner the better, just to ensure that the goals and objectives are written in the plan and the supports and services are included. I am actually going to turn it over to Maria again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. So we're going to talk about some of the supports and services that the regional center can provide. So invite your service coordinator to the transition planning meeting so that the regional center service coordinator can know what's going on and can offer services and supports that through the regional center. And so we're going to talk about some of those services. The service coordinator should also be able to, or should be able to, or do advocate for services from the school and the Department of Rehab if necessary. And the regional center is required to help families secure transition services. So these are important rights that consumers have. When I say consumers, it's the clients of the regional center. I'm having sticky fingers here, so sometimes the PowerPoint just kind of moves along. So when we're talking about employment through a regional center as a service, like what kinds of services, in 2013, the Lanterman Act, which is a series of statutes that make up all of the, say, rules that govern regional centers and DDS, et cetera, they amended the Lanterman Act to state that the highest priority must be given to opportunities for consumers to work in what is called integrated competitive employment. What does that mean? It means that if I'm a consumer of the regional center and I want to work, I should be able to, the highest priority that my service coordinator should have is to, and if that's what I want, is to work in an environment where I'm working with people without disabilities, where I'm earning like other people without disabilities would be earning at least minimum wage, benefits that are available to people who don't have disabilities. So that's integrated competitive employment. There are other types of employment through the regional center, but that's one where the regional centers are by law instructed to give highest priority if that's what the regional center consumer wants, right? Also in college or university, you know, what are the services and supports necessary to be able to obtain or work in an integrated competitive employment situation. We're going to talk about generic resources in a moment, but if you go to the service coordinator and say, oh, you know, I want you to help me, you know, with this tuition for the school that I'm going to go to, and you're also a Department of Rehabilitation client, well, the service coordinator is going to say, well, wait a minute, you've got a generic resource. You've got the Department of Rehab. You need to go to them first before you come to us and ask us for that kind of thing. So other types of transition services, we're going to talk about supported living services, independent living services. And if you look at Welfare and Institutions Code, WIC, Section 4512B, talks about all the kinds of services that you can, doesn't talk about all the services that you can get from the regional center, but that statute actually says, including but not limited to all of these kinds of things, right? So I encourage you, if you're like interested in like, it's a really good statute to use when you're in your IPP meeting and talking about services and say, and the regional center says, well, no, it doesn't, it doesn't cover this. You can just say, but wait a minute, there's no exhaustive list of services that the regional center can provide because the statute says, including, but not limited to all of these things. So supported living services, let's say that I'm living with my parents. I'm a consumer of the regional center and I really want to live on my own. And living on my own doesn't mean I live by myself. I could have roommates, but I'm not living in my family household anymore. So the regional center can provide what are called supported living services. Okay, Maria, you want to go live independently? Well, you've got to be at least 18 years old. You do want to live independently, and you're living in a home that you own or rent. You can have roommates, like I said. And so, what supported living services does is that the regional center figures out what supports and services Maria needs in order to live independently, to live the way she wants to live. And it could be little not a lot of services that I need. Of course, they're going to consider any generic resources I'm receiving. So if I'm getting, for example, in-home supported services from Medi-Cal, then, that's part of the pool of services that I'm going to be receiving. So what is it, the question for the regional center is like, what is it that Maria needs? What is she, and of what she needs, what is she already getting and what is she not getting? And is that something that we should be providing her so that she can live in a supported living situation? So they're going to assess the needs. They may help me to find and maintain my home. What if I want to go work? Help me develop goals, employment goals. What if I want to go out into the community and do things? Help me with that. Train, hire, and fire people who will be providing care in my home. They can help with that. Securing supplies, adaptive equipment, and there's the Welfare and Institution Code that talks about supported living services. Remember, it's probably going to say including but not limited to. So remember, if that's what you want, then you need to make sure that there's a goal in your IPP so that about living independently, so that the service can be provided. If you don't have a goal in your IPP for something, you're not going to get it. If you do, you're lucky. But goals in the IPP are really important in order to secure services. And so who are these supported living service people? They could be vendors through the regional center. They've been gone through the vendorization process to become vendors, and they're going to do it. They're going to help me. It could be a family member or friend, as long as the IPP team approves, or I could do it myself. And maybe, I might be able to do it, or might not be able. I might think that it's too much. Who knows? Now, you're living independently, but it doesn't mean that the regional center is going to pay your rent or mortgage or lease. That's not the way this works. You have to have the ability to pay your rent, your mortgage, or lease, right? There's an exception where the regional center may, for a short period of time, do it because something has happened. And for example, maybe there's a risk of health and safety to the consumer. I have heard it be used in the following context. When COVID was happening, there was a gentleman, consumer of the regional center, who was in a supported living, was getting supported living services. Well, what happened during COVID? And he was working, by the way. And so everything shut down. He couldn't work. He couldn't pay his rent. He was going to lose his apartment. So he went to his service coordinator and said, hey, wait a minute, I need help for at least a little while things start to open back up and I'm able to go back to work. And in fact, they did that. He had been in a supported living situation for a long time, had been working for a long time. And it was like, this is a situation that warranted the regional center providing that help for a limited time. So the other service that can be available for transition as a transition service or not, it could be even later in life. Doesn't just have to be for transition, in your transition plan. You could ask for independent living services when you're 40 and a consumer. So these are skills that the regional center, through perhaps vendors, what's going to happen is that let's say I'm the consumer of the regional center. They're going to help me learn to cook, clean my home, or the area where I live in my home with my family. That could be it too. How to use the bus, perhaps, that I want to use to get to places in the community, and much more. So I have to be 18 or over to, as is true with supported living services. And I could be living with my parents or not living with my parents to get independent living services. Now, with all services that you're going to ask the regional center for, you have to make sure that you've exhausted your generic resource. So the law says that regional centers are payer of last resort. If you have services through other agencies that would pay for the service that you want the regional center to pay for, the service coordinator is going to say to you, you've got school district provides that service. That's a generic resource. Department of Rehab does, Medi-Cal does, whatever other service you may have. And they're going to say, you need to go exhaust that and bring back a letter saying that they've denied it, or at the very least, for us to consider the service. So those are generic resources. IHSS could be a generic resource depending on what service you're asking the service coordinator for. Sometimes what's it called? Personal assistance. Sometimes people ask service coordinators for personal assistance to do the kinds of things that IHSS does. In that situation, the service coordinator could say, but wait a minute, you've got IHSS now. Unless you've exhausted your IHSS and you don't get any more, then they should be able to consider it. So these are just examples that you see here of generic resources. Now, if, for example, I go to the service coordinator and I say, I need a wheelchair. And she says, Maria, you have Medi-Cal, you have to go get it from them first. And I go, and it's going to take a while. And or they deny and I'm going to need to appeal, I could go back, I could say to the service coordinator, look, I'm doing what you're telling me to do. I'm waiting for Medi-Cal or I'm going to appeal the denial, but I need my wheelchair. I can't get out of the house without it. I can't even go to my doctor's. I can't do my grocery shopping. I can't do anything. So you need to provide gap funding while we sort all of this out. So that's called gap funding, really important concept, sort of like a mystery concept, but good to know that it's there. Another service that the regional center can provide through transition is a paid internship program. Um, so if I'm a consumer, I want to do a paid internship, I can talk to my regional center service coordinator. Of course, I have to be. It's available to consumers who are 18 and students too. So remember, because your transition plan starts by law, should be starting, those conversations should start with the school district at age 16. I can do one paid internship and then go on to the next one. There are some limits, but so if I want to do an internship program, I should be talking to my service coordinator. And if the goal is not in my IPP, it should be added to my IPP so that the service can be approved. Now, you can ask for one after the other, but there are limits. Like I said, you can't work more than 1,040 hours a year in a paid internship program. You have to be paid at least minimum wage. You have to be in an integrated work environment. I described that earlier. Competitive integrated employment. And what you see here is language taken directly from the Inland Regional Center website about paid internship programs. So it says your business provides a minimum wage, a better position to an intern. This is like the message to the potential employers, right? Why? Because you know what? The employer doesn't have to pay anything out of pocket. This is all paid for. The hours that I work in this internship for this employer are all funded. Everything is funded by the regional center. So as an employer, I'm like, whoa, this sounds like a really good deal. I don't have to pay for anything and I'm getting someone to come and help. This is great. I'm not going to go through this. If you're, if you're an employer or you know of someone who is an employer and is interested in participating in paid internship program, there's information on this in this slide and the next slide. It's just a lot of information that may or not be useful or helpful at this time. But like I said, if you know of an employer, share it. So there are certain services that the regional center cannot provide for people who are ages 18 and 22 and are still in special education. Okay. So those services are the ones you see here. Because why? Because they're going to say, well, the school district can provide those services. But there are exceptions that we're going to talk about next. Now, if you've left the school system, it's possible that the regional center may say, well, you need to go back. Not, because not everyone receives a diploma. And so you might be able to go back and get those services through the school district. But when will they say, well, okay, we're not going to make you go do that. Maybe we will provide these 5 services that are in the prior screen. If the IPP team decides that the generic service is not appropriate, so no, the school district, it's not appropriate, they're not going to provide what it is that I need, or that or Department of Rehab is not going to be appropriate. They're not going to provide the services that you're really asking for, or maybe the school. Yeah, so it's all here. And also if as a consumer, I'm participating in the paid internship program, then the regional center does have to provide the services that are in the prior prior slide. Let me show them to you again. Day program, vocational education, work services, independent living services, training, mobility, and related transportation services. Okay, I'm going to now pass it on to Raymond Wong, who is going to talk about Department of Rehab. He's also having some internet issues, so he will not be showing his face, but he will be speaking to us about the services that are available through the Department of Rehab.
Thank you, Maria. So my name is Raymond. I am an advocate with Disability Rights California. My camera is on right now, so if my audio gets choppy, I will have to turn it off just to make sure I don't disconnect. So um as Maria and Mary mentioned earlier, during the transition planning process, you can also invite DOR to the planning meeting, and DOR is supposed to offer pre-employment transition services, or I'm going to call it pre-ETS from this point forward. It is a list of services that can help students with disabilities under the age of 22 to prepare for their careers. And DOR is required to ensure these services are available to the students. And I know the last point says no need to apply for pre-ETS, but I would still ask for them just in case. And here's some of the list of services that are available. So the first is job exploration counseling, such as talking about different options, career speakers, learning about the labor market, so finding out which career path is hiring lots of people, career assessments, and mentors. Another is work-based learning. So this includes job shadowing. So the student can go to different job sites to see if it is something they want to do, volunteering, paid internships, and summer jobs. Counseling on post-secondary education opportunities. So this is for students who might want to go to higher education, so they can talk about schools such as colleges, universities, trade schools. They can even talk about taking college level classes, summer programs, and college visits, so they can see if it is an environment that they like to go to school in. Work readiness training, so they can learn about social skills in the workplace, how to understand instructions, time management such as punctuality and planning, getting ready for work, transportation training. So if the students need to learn how to take public transportation, and then working on their resumes and developing interviewing skills. And instruction on self-advocacy. So this will help students build their confidence, learning how to make choices and knowing their rights. This will be touched on later when we talk about disagreements and how to appeal certain decisions, exploring community resources, and again, how to challenge a decision. And to be qualified to become a Department of Rehab or DOR client, the person has to have a physical or mental impairment that substantially impedes their ability to secure employment. And vocational rehab services are required to help them prepare for, secure, retain, or regain employment consistent to the person's strength, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, and interests, and of course, their informed choice, and that the individuals can, excuse me, can benefit from DOR services in terms of an employment outcome in an integrated setting. Someone is presumed eligible if they are receiving Social Security benefits such as SSI or supplemental security income, or if they have a valid ticket to work. And if you'd like to learn more about ticket to work, there is a phone number at the end here, which is I'm just going to read it out, 866-449-2730. So this is for voice.
I just wanted to make sure that, Raymond, for pre-ETS services, you don't have to be technically a quote unquote DOR client. But if you do want to become a client of DOR, then this is what you need to show, right?
Yes, for pre-ETS services is between the age of 16 to 22, if I remember correctly. And as long as they have 504 or IEP, or if they consider to have the disability, they should qualify for pre-ETS.
Okay, thank you.
And applying to DOR services, so this is outside of the pre-ETS. Individuals can apply online. Last time I checked, their website online application is still unavailable. So the best way to apply to DOR services right now would be calling the local office or attending an orientation. And you can find this information on their website if you go on there and go to contact us, and you can find your nearest DOR office by putting in your zip code. And once you submit an application, DOR has 60 days to determine the eligibility unless unless it needs to be extended due to having to conduct a trial work experience or any exceptional and unforeseen circumstances that's beyond the control of the DOR. So during that 60 days, DOR might ask you for documents if they need to see your disability. After an individuals get the eligibility letter, DOR has up to 90 days to develop the individualized plan for employment, and that can also be extended if agreed on by both the applicant and DOR. So the individualized plan for employment, or I'm going to call it IPE from now on. So this is a contract between the individual, the applicant, and the DOR, and that includes the employment goal, which is the person's future job. So this is the most important part because everything in this plan is based on the employment goal. And it doesn't have to be an entry-level job goal either. Um, so if, for example, you want to go in and your employment goal is to become an attorney, to become a lawyer, then all the services and in this plan will be based on that. So I usually tell callers to be specific on the employment goal. If they just go in telling DOR that they just want a job, then DOR will likely find them an entry level job for you. So you want to be specific. And this plan will contain any timelines that can be updated, any steps in order to reach the employment goal. So again, um, everything is go back to that goal. Services needed to reach the goal. So if your goal requires, let's say, going back to the attorney as an employment goal, you'll need schooling. So you need potentially a degree, license, whatever that may be, that would be included in the individualized plan for employment. Who will provide each services and when they will start. And again, everything is based on your choice. So again, and that could also include transportation, allowance for transportation. It could also include clothing for interview, or even any assistive technology that the individual may need in order to reach that goal. And then I will pass over to I believe Maria, right, for this portion.
It is, it is. I had mentioned earlier that sometimes when you're working with too many agencies, they're just going to say, no, it's them, and bounce you back and forth. Well, you know what? Get them all on around the table, have them talk to one another. Uh, when you schedule meetings when they're all going to be there. And then sit down and figure out who's doing what. Now, if one of them denies something, remember, They're required to issue a notice. So that you can appeal their decision to deny eligibility or deny services. You can always contact us should you need to. How do you solve a problem? Like Maria, no, I'm kidding. So what do you do? Less formal, you're going to talk to the person you've been dealing with. So if it's the regional center, it's going to be your service coordinator. If it's DOR, it's going to be your counselor, the person assigned. Talk to them. Write it all out. A lot of parents, for example, in the special ed context, they have emails for the teachers. Send an email saying, this is the issue, I need help. If you're going to have a meeting, bring a friend, bring someone, bring an advocate. Ask for explanations. If you don't understand what they're saying, ask them to rephrase it, re-say it, get it in writing, bring a note taker if you need to. If you're not getting any help from that person, ask to talk to a supervisor, the next person up the chain of command. I always like to start with the person I've been dealing with first because I want to give them a chance. Because why? Because I'm going to probably be working with this person for a long, long time to come, right? Most likely. And so I want to have a cordial relationship. I don't want to go over that person's head without giving that person the chance to help me. More formal ways of resolving your issues are, of course, you can always appeal or file grievances with the different entities. You can call us, you can call the Office of Clients' Rights if you're a regional center consumer. You know, we have manuals for special ed rights and responsibilities manual that Mary mentioned. We've got the rights under the Lanham manual for regional center consumers. Disability Rights California has the contract to provide advocacy support to consumers or people who want to be clients of the Department of Rehabilitation. So you can reach out to us for any issues you may have. Appeal. I always say appeal by the deadline. You can always withdraw your appeal. It's easy to withdraw an appeal. It's very difficult to, if you appeal late, to get that to move forward. Okay, so appeal, can always withdraw. Easy to withdraw. You can, where appropriate, file complaints. If there are issues that are issues that are for public meetings, go voice your concerns, talk about what's going on, contact your representatives. Lastly, we've got our intake line. So if you want to call us, you can call us there. If you need an alternative format, it's there. You can always go on our website and fill out an intake form and do it like that. The Office of Client Rights Advocates intake line is the one you see here. So we've come to the end of the presentation.